The Radio Forest Podcast.
Forrest, this is Brad Upton.
Brad, I've got a problem with you, buddy.
What's that?
Shipping your geese to Idaho, not cool.
They were going to northern Idaho, Coeur d'Alene area.
Oh, okay.
Does that count? Is that okay?
Yeah, we're in Boise. That's fine.
Yeah, they flew back. I mean, you know, that afternoon, as soon as they kicked them out of the truck, they were flying back to Seattle.
Yeah, Brad's got some issues with the Canadian geese in Seattle pooping, and they're very aggressive. And Brad, you're on the Bob and Tom show, and now with me. What a pleasure, man. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you having me. I love Boise.
Surely you've been through here a lot, right? You've been doing comedy since like 86, 84, 86, based out of Seattle, so you've had to come through here, right?
I've come through there many times. I was in Ontario last weekend. That is known as Idaho's Pot Store.
Absolutely, yes. You stopped teaching to go after comedy full time. Now in 86, there are some big stars. You've got like George Carlin, you've got Eddie Murphy and people like that. But it wasn't like as common as it is now. Did it seem like this is a smart business decision? That had to have been pretty scary, right?
Yes and no. I mean, comedy was booming in the 80s, and, you know, I was teaching fourth grade, and I said, well, I'm gonna stop teaching. I'm going to quit teaching and see how this works out for a year, and if it doesn't work out, I'll go back and teach, and it worked out very well.
So was comedy at that time bigger than it is now? Because now it seems like there are a million comics. Maybe that's because of social media, but also a lot more clubs. But you're saying it was actually pretty big in 86 too?
Oh, yeah. In the 80s, it was booming. Big comedy boom in the 80s because there was nothing all up until about 82. And then all of a sudden, comedy was everywhere. And, you know, they had to fill those spots. So it was easier. It's easier then to start in comedy than it is now because now there's so many comics that the pool is diluted. So back then there were a lot more jobs and a lot less comics.
Tell me then about your very first stand-up gig. I've heard that you maybe ditched it.
I did. I quit. The very first time I signed up for an open mic. And just before it was my turn, I went up to the MC and I said, I'm not going up. He goes, well, you're almost up. I go, I know I'm not going up. And I chickened out, and I drove home. I was living in the Tri-Cities. I lived in Pasco. I drove back to Pasco, and I hated myself for a year. And then I went back a year later and signed up and finally went up a year later. So, I mean, I was scared to do it. That's why I took so long to first try it. I mean, it's pretty scary the first time you do it. I finally, you know, after I chickened out, I was disappointed in myself. I finally went, I got to do this. I have to try it. Went well the first time I got on stage. It went great. Had it not, I may never have done it again.
So maybe it's a good thing because if you would have done that first gig and kind of bombed, it might have scared you more than quitting.
No, that's right. Maybe I wasn't ready. And if I'd have bombed and I went, oh, that was awful, I hated it, I'm not ever doing that again. That could have been the result. Those early days, they either make you or break you. They make you better or make you quit. But once you get past that, yeah, man, I've had a ton of good of highs. I've opened for a bunch of people. I work cruise ships all over the country. Frequent performer at the Grand Ole Opry. And that's a big deal, man. And to walk out on that stage, they don't use very many comedians there. That's always a big deal to walk out and stand there.
So how did you cross paths with Dolly Parton? Is that connected to the Opry or are those separate?
No, that was before. I had Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton were still to this day the biggest crowd I've ever performed in front of. They were in the Tacoma Dome on New Year's Eve, and there was 22,000 people in there. And a local agent, needed somebody to do 30 minutes while everybody was trying to park outside because it was New Year's Eve. You're just up there killing time till everybody files in, right, and gets in their seats. So I got to do that show that night. That was a big deal.
One of your millennial bits has hit 89 million views. So talk to me about how long did it take to go viral and then what changed for you? Does 89 million views equal more money for you or just more opportunities to work?
Both, absolutely. That video, when it dropped June of 2018, that video got 33 million views in 10 days.
Whoa.
And I'm telling you, it changed everything. All of a sudden, people were looking for me and searching for me and trying to find me online and sharing my clips. I dropped another one 10 days later. That thing went crazy. Not as much as the first one, but by the end of the summer, I had about 50 million views in about 3 months. all of a sudden people knew who I was. It was a game changer.
Then are you sucked in? You're like, I got to get TikTok and Instagram and YouTube, and I got to be doing stories, and I got to go live.
Absolutely. The business now, that's the business. And it's hard because, coming up with really good material takes a long time. I actually got somebody that started handling my postings, and they go, you got to post every day. I go, nobody wants to hear from me every day. That seems annoying to me. And they go, nope, you have to post every day. I used to not want to post my material online because I didn't want people to see it before they came. And now they've seen everything. It's very awkward.
Do you feel pressure then to have a completely new set? You're like, these people want to hear some of the stuff they're familiar with. His comedy's a mix of, oh my gosh, I love this bit, and also the surprise of a joke that you didn't know how the ending was going to go is some of the joy of it. So how do you mix that with your shows now that you've gotten so popular on social media?
No, that's exactly right. That's a good observation and question. I mean, that's how it is, because as a comedian, you have certain things that are your greatest hits and people know and they want to hear them. But you're right. People want to hear new stuff too. I've been doing that stuff about millennials for probably 10 years in my act because the audience every night hadn't seen me before and hadn't heard it, and it was killing. But as soon as it went viral and everybody'd seen it 6 times, I went, oh, this stuff isn't hitting like it used to. And it's because everybody'd seen it. But if you don't do it, then the people are like, oh, I was hoping you'd do that bit. And so as a comedian, myself and all comics, you don't know how much old stuff and new stuff to put in. I mean, if you're going to see the Rolling Stones, you want to hear all their hits, but nobody wants to hear their new stuff, right? So comedians are a little different, but it's always a question in our minds.
So you had it for 10 years before it hit 89 million views? Was it because then hooking up with Dry Bar or just getting exposed, or is it just...
Yeah, I did that special. I was one of the very first ones that did a special for Dry Bar. That was a chunk of material I'd been doing in clubs that had been killing in clubs. And they put it online, and boy, it got shared immediately, and everybody was going nuts over it.
You've got some shows coming up in Singapore and London. Do you change? I mean, I guess they're English-speaking when they come, obviously, in Singapore. Otherwise, they wouldn't come see you. Do you change anything at all, or is it just like doing a random bar in Canada or a home club in Seattle?
That's a good question, too. And I change a little bit, but not much. I do a lot of stuff about millennials and Gen Z, and I do stuff about being married forever. And that works everywhere on Earth. But there's things you have to run through. When I worked internationally before, you got to run through your whole act in your head, because I do some stuff about going into Home Depot, right? So, that's never going to work in London or Singapore, because they don't have big box store home improvement stores. So in your head, you're like, well, that's not going to work. So you got to kind of go through I do a bunch of stuff about traffic. Some of that stuff will work in some of those cities, but making a long pass on a 2-lane highway, that's not going to work in either one of those places. So I just have to go through my whole act in my head before I go on and think about what the joke is about.
You've also ran track, and you also coach track and have. Here's my question. Other than telling the person to run faster the next time, how do you coach somebody running?
You do, yeah. That's what I always tell some of the jumpers. They go, any advice? I go, jump as far as you can. How's that for good advice?
I'm done. I'll be at the bar.
For good advice. Yeah, I'll be at the bar. You just got to get them trained. I coach hurdlers, so you can make a lot of improvement in the hurdles. You finally get their technique more efficient. I competed in Boise several times when I was competing. I competed at Boise State.
I know that you saw George Carlin pretty early in seeing live comedy. It's kind of cliche, and a lot of people are saying that, like, what would George Carlin do now? But I can't put my thumb on what he would say about anything, and maybe that was the gift of Carlin, because if you look at it, it wasn't as political as it is now, or at least it was kind of different. But he made fun of Republicans and Democrats. But now that it's so political...
Yeah, I stay away from political stuff. I don't touch it. I don't want people to figure out what my politics are. I don't even want them to know, because it's just poison now. But if you watch some of George Carlin's clips from 25, 30 years ago, they are more prophetic now than they ever were. I think he might be the voice of reason if he was still performing and writing.
You think he would have leaned harder into it?
Yeah, probably, and he would have hammered both sides. That was the beauty of it. But boy, people can't hear a joke about their politics at all without being offended by it. So that's a good question. I don't know if he'd have been able to get away from it. Man, people just hate you if they don't like one of your jokes. It's not like, oh, I didn't like that joke, I still like this guy. Man, they turn on you right away. When I started, Reagan was president. So I made Reagan jokes, and then I made the first Bush jokes, and I made Clinton jokes, and everybody haw-hawed about it. Nobody. But about the year 2000 on, all of a sudden, man, you make a George Bush joke, and all of a sudden some people were upset about it, and I quit doing any kind of political jokes 20 years ago.
Tell me about the special I'm Not Done Yet. That's up on YouTube on Dry Bar, along with your other special. Where was I'm Not Done Yet shot?
Those were both taped in Provo, Utah. Dry Bar Comedy is in Provo, Utah. And I taped them both. And here's an interesting side note. I was really sick when I taped that I'm Not Done Yet. I was really sick. I had just been erroneously diagnosed with esophageal cancer.
Whoa.
So going into that, the reason I taped that, I went, I got to get this. I thought I was looking at several, esophageal cancer is a bad one. Man, I got to get this on tape before I go into the hospital, and I may be doing chemo and radiation, and I may not make this. So I want to get this on tape, and I was really sick when I taped that. And I did not have esophageal cancer, and while we were waiting for more tests, I had a heart attack 2 weeks after that. After I taped that.
What?
Nobody more surprised than me, because I have been a fitness fanatic my whole life. If you watch the video real close, you can see me a couple of times. I kind of hyperventilate. I kind of go, you can see I'm having trouble catching my breath. And now I realize my heart was seizing up. 2 weeks later, my right coronary artery was 100% blocked.
So wait a minute, you're getting sick. They say that you've got cancer. You shoot the special and then find out you don't have cancer?
Right. While we were waiting for more tests. I was diagnosed with a really, really rare autoimmune disease from the vasculitis family, and it was causing all kinds of problems inside me. This is before I was diagnosed, and that's what caused the heart attack. And then once they finally diagnosed it and put me on all these anti-inflammatories and stuff, I got way better real fast, and I'm doing fine now.
This could be it. I mean, the cancer
diagnosis. Be my last taping. Mm-hmm.
Oh,
I really did.
Man.
I told the guy, I said, if I don't make it, call this Dead Man Talking. That was going to be the name of my special. But I didn't. That was the last time when I got on stage that night. I did not work again for about 3 months. That was the last time I got on stage.
So how long after the heart attack until you worked, or is that to 3 months?
That was about 2 months before I got on stage again.
False cancer diagnosis, 3 months? That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, and it's weird mentally. I mean, it's very odd mentally. I've always been thankful that I get to do what I do for a living, and I've been more thankful since then.
Well, 89 million views on Dry Bar. It's comedian Brad Upton. You can also watch 2 of his specials on YouTube right now, including I'm Not Done Yet. Brad, it's been a pleasure to talk to you, man, and we hope to see you on the road soon.
Thanks, Forrest. I appreciate it.